Thank you so much, Amarette, everyone, right? Don't we want, let's give her a round of applause. Yay. Thank you. Some of us have not had breakfast. This is perfect, because if you have too much coffee and no breakfast, bad things happen, especially if you're running a meeting. Okay, so with that, it is 9:02. And I would like to call to order the meeting of the Building and Operating Committee of this Thursday, September 21st, 2023. But before we begin, please note this meeting is being recorded. Welcome to my colleagues and everyone who is joining us here in person, as well as those listening to us on the phone. I'd like to provide public comment at today's meeting, and if you have not already done so, please let Thomas, and thank God for Thomas too, right? In the back of the room, or Justine, we also thank God for her too, on the call-in line, know what items you would like to speak to today. Madam Secretary, please begin by calling the roll.
Thank you. Starting with Director Cochran.
Present.
Conroy is absent. Parr.
Present.
Rabbit is absent. Here.
Here.
Vice Chair Maston.
Here.
Chair Garbarino.
Here.
And President Tirio.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum. Also in the room is Directors Croswell, Hernandez, and Hill. We are not a committee of the whole. We're still just a committee.
Okay.
And then let me confirm staff in the room. We have General Manager Dennis Mulligan.
Present.
Auditor Controller Joe Wire.
Yes.
David Barr-Furbish.
Present.
Thank you. Kim Manolius.
Morning.
Morning. Dave Rivera.
Good morning, President.
And Kelly Hopper.
Present.
And Mike Hoffman is at a ferry exercise on the bay today, so he's not here with us. And that confirms everyone in the room.
Wonderful. Thank you. After our discussion, we will ask any public comment before moving on. Please follow along by referring to the page numbers located on the bottom right-hand corner of your meeting packet. We'll begin with agenda item number 3, which is to approve actions relative to award of contract number 2023 BT071 Transit Data Dashboard to Swiftly Incorporated. The staff report begins on page 3, and Kelly Hopper, thank God, is here to present. It's a very religious morning. The report. Kelly, go right ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm actually bringing an item to you, which is a renewal of a contract with Swiftly, as was mentioned. It is to approve a 1-year term with 2 additional terms for a total of amount of a little over $400,000. Swiftly provides our data and visualization software. Sorry, that's a big word. As we know in the transit industry, accurate data is the lifeblood of any efficient and effective transit system. And Swiftly, several years ago, the district embarked on a business intelligence model where we were looking, because we saw gaps in certain areas of our data. And so we did a BI study with a consultant, and as part of that, we found a solution which ultimately became Swiftly to provide some data in order to fill some of the gaps and accelerate the receipt of some of the data that we needed. Swiftly really has 3 modules that we use that are kind of important for us. One is the running time data, which is quite important for optimization of our service schedules. Another one is our AVL replay, which is not only for safety, but also for customer relations purposes. We have the AVL module. And then finally, some real-time data that we're able to do in terms of interfacing with customers. So we're looking to renew this contract in order to allow us to continue to have access and availability in a more timely and efficient manner. I did want to mention several departments use this. This just isn't used by our bus scheduling department, but our field operations, our road supervisors use it on an ongoing basis, as well as our customer service. So while there may be systems that, for instance, Innit may be able to provide a small portion of the data for our road supervisors, the other units are not able to do that. So this really allows for multiple uses among various departments. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues at this time? Such a great report that there are none. Okay, that concludes discussion on item number 3. Before we take our vote, though, is there anyone from the public, Justine, who's wishing to speak at this time?
We have no speakers. on the
Seeing we
public
don't have any
comment
speakers
item.
in the room, do you have anyone on your public line?
We do not. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Great, thank you both. So this is a motion that has been seconded for contract number 2023 BT 071, Transit Data Dashboard. And we also have a roll call.
You got it. I'm only going to be roll calling the committee members since we're still just a committee, starting with Director Cochran.
Yes.
Conroy is absent. Parr,
Yes.
Rapid is absent. Beer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Maston.
Aye.
Chair Garbarino,
Yes,
and President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 5 ayes.
wonderful. That motion obviously passes. And we will now continue on to item number 4, which is an informational monthly report from board appointees on the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit Board. And I will start off the report with coming into the last millennium. I finally figured out I don't have to write down everything from what took place yesterday. And that is the only meeting, and I'm going to heavily rely on my colleague Barb as well, that we've had since our last meeting. The general manager's report included a report on ridership, any contracts over $100,000, pathway counts, 3-car train threshold, free youth summer program, very successful, pathway finding update, Caltrans planning grant, smart rider alerts, Smart Connect. And in addition to that, sorry, Dennis, the recovery rate is over 105% coming back from COVID. Eddie, who is, I like to say about people like Eddie that they're at their own birthday party every day. He's so enthusiastic. He had some calculation, correct me if I'm wrong, Barb, that the amount of miles offset from someone being in their car would circumvent the globe 64 times. The third car discussion was really interesting because, you know, with any agency, there's sometimes criticism on both sides. So there are people who want a third car, and Bert and Mike will appreciate this because they need more space for bikes. And there are people that don't see anybody on the train, and those people are incorrect. But the threshold for a third car I found interesting. When the trips in 30 days on average are more than 50% full, then they would consider putting on a third car. And to quote Eddie again, I just gotta say, this is a great problem to have. So the quandary around putting in a third car, because as you know, there are only 2 cars. So Barb, you might want to talk about that insane idea about putting those bicycles on the rails. That was truly odd. But it kind of got some great support. I mean, it looked bizarre. If any of you, and then I will stop because I have had too much coffee, have been in the Pearl District in Portland, they have a committee bike, which looks like a total headache. And there are 11 people who all ride, and they all have a steering wheel. So imagine how far down the street they get. But this one is similar, but it's just 2 or 4 people that get to ride a rail.
And it's a fixed route. It's a fixed rail.
Yeah. Oh, do they have one in, apparently they
So
have.
they're on a rail, like
Pardon me?
literally the bike is on a rail,
On a rail, unused
on
at
the
the time.
bridge.
Yes,
On the bridge, on a rail.
right,
It's like a bicycle built for 4.
right.
Huh.
Like a Surrey with the fringe on top, without the fringe on top.
Okay.
Yeah. But apparently they're all over the place. In-
Boone, Iowa has one.
There
The
we
skunk
go.
train has one.
Who does?
The skunk train.
Skunk train.
Right.
At Fort Bragg, you can do it from, not that I know or anything. Not that I've done it.
Oregon. They're called rail bikes.
Hey, everyone, just give us one moment. We seem to be having some audio difficulties. Thank you. We'll be reconnecting back into the meeting shortly. Thanks for your patience.
We're cool. All right.
Of the train's biggest terminuses. And so to get the ferries in line with that is wonderful. And we talked about, I didn't realize this, but you all look for a 25-minute difference between when the train arrives and when the ferry leaves, because it's a little awkward there at Larkspur. There isn't a direct, well, there is a direct path, but it's still awkward. Bert would have a hard time with it, right, Bert?
Yes.
Yes.
Just ask me.
Just ask, he's probably done that before. The part that I was really proud of was, the Sonoma County Grand Jury was part of us. They gave us an extensive report a month ago, and they didn't give us very much time. They actually gave us until April to answer the questions. I mean, we actually turned it in, but then to flesh it out. And by yesterday, the staff had fleshed out 2 of the grand jury requests. One of them, unfortunately, was to look at what it would look like if we didn't pass a sales tax extension in 2024. We have a detractor or 2 that we know by name that think that someone's going to rush in on a white horse and save us. So our financial folks, Heather McGill, did an amazing job, an amazing analysis of how long we could run as an organization without the sales tax. And she put it over 2 or 3 different attempts at a sales tax. The bottom line was there isn't a white horse. There isn't someone in $6 million to save us if the sales tax doesn't pass. Property taxes is what people look at. The schools get the property taxes. So my statement was, so we'll make a decision between teaching kids and getting them to school with our property tax. Because, yeah, the schools won't go gracefully if we try to get transportation money for that. We don't have a history in either Napa or at the federal government of having $60 million yearly grants to subsidize transportation. So it's a great report. You can put it up online. It's fascinating. And it basically told us how important it was that we do whatever we can to make sure that the tax passes. SMART will not immediately fold. It will try to keep its head above water, and I won't say anymore. We'll just hope that it passes. The second, yes, Bert?
What's your third recovery right now?
It's not good, but part of that is we're still in construction. It's new. We're still running 2-car trains because we don't have the ridership now. And I guess that thing that we need to be careful doesn't become the message is that, oh, look at how low the fare box recover, or how high the fare box, how much we subsidize the fares, because we're still a brand new organization. And that fare box recovery coming down to what's ours, 25 or 30%, or
Before the pandemic, it was quite good. Fare box recovery is no longer, I think, appropriate for transit, because transit is a public service. If you want to serve the community, SMART lowered their fares to make it easier for people to ride it.
we
So
give a lot
actions
of
like
money.
that are good for the community, but it gets away from that, historic metric that people judge transit on, that arguably is less important if you look at transit as a public service. All transit loses money, it's a business. The question is, should the community have transit widely available? So folks that don't have access to cars can get around, and for folks that have cars that want to help the environment, they can move around. And so SMART's made some decisions that arguably hurt their fare box recovery, but are really good for the community. I think it's more important to focus on the community good as opposed to what's that percentage number. So, their number is low, but I would argue, so what?
And that's going to be the message that's going to be hard to counteract, because people like to look at the money first and then they look at the services. So somehow, and that's one of the other things we did.
I agree with you.
Good.
The question was not from that angle.
From an angle of,
From
yeah,
the
but that's a great question, because that is the question the public asks, especially if their sales tax money is going to support it. Where did I go with that? The other piece was we spent a lot of time on the end of year report, the financial report. I think we're going to do that here today. Joe's going to run us through that. So that was interesting. That was fascinating. That's where the $60 million comes up. How much would to run it the way it is? The second grand jury report, I didn't write it down. I just wrote.
It was on the consultant.
Oh, that's right. We authorized the. It was interesting, the grand jury, when they gave us our feedback, gave us some very carefully worded directions. One of them was that we needed a consultant to help us with information to the public and marketing. And so that folds into a campaign. And so I have a feeling that all of that will kind of come together when we get a consultant. It will be known as a political consultant, I'm sure. It's also part of our marketing and information, because with a small organization like SMART, which is relatively small compared to the grid, it is a challenge to get the information out to people. So that will be an interesting movement. We're hoping to have that happen within the next 6 to 8 weeks, that we actually award a contract to someone and get moving. It's next year.
Yeah, no, I looked to Kansas City, who did studies on, and they took the overhead cost of maintaining a fare-based system,
Uh-huh.
and they managed to get the businesses to finance the system.
Oh, interesting.
Look it up.
We'll mention that to Eddie. He's very, very knowledgeable. He's like Dennis. He knows everything. It's just a matter of him making us smart enough to know
That
everything.
was last September's presentation, so we'll see how it is today.
Okay. Kansas City. Thank you very
This
much.
is to an earlier point in,
Okay.
in the presentation. On 3 cars. I have actually been on SMART when the train has been crammed. And I did actually wonder how are they going to fit another bike on, but also just the number of passengers on it was pretty full. There were people standing, and almost a BART car. And I thought, I wonder if they could put a 3rd car on here. And so is that something that is just being discussed, or is it something that is actually in the works at this point?
I think both, but correct me
It
if I'm
isn't
wrong.
actually in the works. I mean, there isn't we'll have a 3rd car on January 1st or anything like that. It's as Patty said, and I wished I had brought my notes, but it's a number rubric. It's a number of passengers plus the number of bikes. There are also some logistical issues. If someone comes in and immediately takes the fold down seats, which are next to the bike hooks, then that takes away 2 bike hooks. And so, it's that sort of thing. And it was pointed out that typically people stand when they're in public transportation. I mean, you can look at all the BART and the buses and that sort of thing. So to have a few people stand isn't that unusual. It's just that they expect SMART to give you a seat. It's so beautiful and runs so well. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's a great question.
Yeah, I think one thing that was mentioned for all of us you bikers out there, they've never had to turn a bike rider away, but they're kind of getting close. So that's the essence and that rubric that you talked about. Are there any other questions or comments about SMART? The dialogue, I just have a couple of things to add. SMART Start is tracking BART's start. So it shouldn't be that we have such angst over ridership, because it's really tracking what the start of BART was. And BART, as you know, is packed and successful. The sales tax measure is an extension of an existing
right.
measure.
I should
Yeah,
use those
sorry.
words.
Sorry, no, I think that the
get
opposition.
excited about it.
Oh, and one other thing, the opposition was terribly well funded, like in the millions. So that's a hard thing to overcome.
Who's the funder?
We do
Gallagher.
know Gallagher
Yeah.
with the casino.
So, and then I kind of let loose on the grand jury report, the Marin County part, and said at the end that I hope nobody ever from Marin County, and I apologize to all the people who live with me in Marin County, ever going to think, oh, I'll bail out Marin County. What a great idea, an affluent community, and give them $60 million every year. Not gonna happen. And then my point too about the next generation expects this of us, so we need to make sure it's still there. Then Eddie had a secret that I can't tell.
I couldn't tell it either. I talked to him about it again this
It's a
morning.
really good one.
Oh,
It's a
that's
really,
brutal.
No, you
yeah, I
can't
know
do
it is
it
brutal,
until
huh?
he
I'm
thinks
really
it'll come
very
out tomorrow.
mean-spirited, but we can tell you later. I just want to end this. It's a really good secret, and it involves millions of dollars, and, like 32 million. So,
This is less of a secret.
yeah, I know it's becoming less of a secret, and there's a little mini in it for you if you figure out what it is. Oh, good. Well, thank you, Barb and everyone. And we will now move on to. Oh, sorry, Holly. Yes, go right ahead.
So I just wanted to thank you both for that report and for all of your service on SMART. I think it is very important that we support the renewal, the extension of the tax measure. And I wanted to just echo the words that our fearless leader Dennis made. Talking about the importance of providing the transit, the fact that you know, in the early stages, transit does lose money. I was on the first BART train, even though I'm only 29. I was on the first BART train, and I remember the same arguments and things where people said, "Oh, these are empty. No one's ever going to use it." And look at where it's at now.
There you go.
So I just wanted to echo my words of support, not only for your service, but also for continuing the system. And I think it's a critical infrastructure to support people getting out of cars and also support people getting to work. So those are my comments.
And the students getting.
And the students getting to
Yeah,
school, yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. And it is a secret because he got notification at the end of the meeting. So it ended the meeting on a high because people were needing like to be picked up with a spatula after the report on the renewal. And he wants to make sure that the representative who resides part of the year in Washington DC gets credit for it. So that's why it's staying where it is. Okay, so that concludes all of our discussion on item number 4. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
We have no speakers for this item, and we have no speakers on the line. I checked in with Justine when we were having this discussion, so we're okay on this item.
Okay, and as you all know, there's no action required for item number 4, so we'll move on to item number 5. The status report on engineering projects begins on page 7. And our dear district engineer, Ava Bauer-Furbish, is here to present a report. Go right ahead.
The committee, my written report is before you, and I'll be happy to answer your
My
question.
written report is before you, and I'll be happy to answer your question.
Towards the bottom, can you elaborate on the conditions that the court asked about or requested, or would you rather not?
I think there are discussions that involve our presence at the care, and so we hope that despite certain demands from the board, we can resolve this issue, and hopefully we can get this project built. I would rather not elaborate.
Okay,
If I may.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you.
Anyone else? No action then associated with item number 5. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
No speakers for this item in the room or online as well.
Okay, and wondering too if there's anyone who would like to address this body under item number 6, public comment.
Okay, one last check-in. Justine, do you have anyone who would like to speak under public comment?
We have no one that would like to speak under public comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Very quiet, peaceful world out there. Thank you. We've reached the end of the agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? In a second.
Second.
Thank you. I'm assuming this is the meeting of the Building and Operating Committee. Thank you very much, colleagues. Barb, for your presentation as well, and all of your questions. It is 9:30.